The Bayonne property is part of Margaux Resources Kootenay Arc project in southern BC. It's a gold project and it's located about 12 kilometers east of our Sheep Creek property. In some respects, the Bayonne property is similar to Sheep Creek. It hosts a number of gold-bearing orogenic veins, and the veining is the same age and the same style as at Sheep Creek. It's a really exciting project, and it's one that's been kind of neglected, and we think that makes it a good opportunity for us. So the veins were discovered on the Bayonne project in the early 1900s. At that time, this was a really remote area. Our access to the property now is by about 10 kilometers of logging road from the Salmo-Creston Highway. That highway wasn't built until the early 1960s, so before that, this was a long and difficult hike to get into here. Eventually, they did build a cat road from the east, from a place called Tie Siding, and that trail was over very mountainous terrain. It wasn't a road that vehicles could travel, and that really hampered the exploration and development of the project. In 1935, a company called Bayonne Consolidated Mines began underground development on the Bayonne main vein. They started producing gold in 1936 and they continued through 1942. That was during the war, and so the mine was eventually forced to shut down due to a shortage of labor and materials from the war effort. They did attempt to restart operations in '46 after the war, but that was unsuccessful. One reason was the very difficult access, and the other was a shortage of available materials. There's been very little work done on the property since mining stopped in the mid-40s. When the Salmo-Creston Highway was built in '63, access to this area got much better, and so there was a bit of work done that same year. A company called West Resources acquired the property, and they looked at putting it back into production. That didn't happen, and then nothing further was done for about 20 years. In the early 1980s, a company called MargauxResources Resources acquired the property, and they rehabilitated some of the underground workings, and they did a program of underground sampling. That was a pretty short-lived program, and details from their work are pretty sparse, and really not much of any substance has been done on the property since that time. The total historic production from the Bayonne property is just over 42,000 ounces of gold from about 82,000 tons of ore, and that mostly represents mining that was done from 1936 to 1946. So the average grade from the historic mining is 16 grams to the ton gold, or just over a half an ounce to the ton. Those are pretty attractive grades. One thing to remember is that the gold prices are significantly better now than they were during any of the previous periods of work on the property, and that changes the economics for us. One of the differences between Bayonne and Sheep Creek is the rocks that host the veins. Now, the way that veins form is the rock cracks in response to stresses that are building up, and then gold-bearing fluids come into those open spaces along the cracks, and they crystallize to form veins. But at Sheep Creek, the veins are hosted within a folded layer cake sequence of sedimentary rocks. The different rocks in that layer cake respond differently to the stress regime, so certain layers crack better than others, and they make those open spaces that the veins need to form. And that means the veins at Sheep Creek are preferentially located within certain rock units. Well, at Bayonne, the entire area is within a large granodiorite intrusion, and the intrusion has a consistent response to the buildup of stress. So what that means from a vein point of view is that the veins aren't constrained by any particular rock layer. So we think that at Bayonne, that means that the veins have the potential to have a greater strike extent and greater depth extent than what we see at Sheep Creek. Margaux Resources optioned the Bayonne property in early 2017. This is our first season of work on the project. We've collected a bunch of rock samples from known veins on the property, and we don't have all of those results back from the lab yet, but so far we've had some very good results from surface samples. There are 15 of the samples that we've collected that grade better than 10 grams to the ton gold, with 8 of those running better than 20 grams to the ton gold. And that's giving us confidence in the historically reported grades and giving us confidence that there could be economically mineable veins here. Now, those samples were collected over a very large area. There are at least 10 gold-bearing veins on the Bayonne property within an area that's about 4 kilometers east-west by about 1 kilometer north-south. And there's lots of room in between those veins to discover others. The only veins that have had any historical mining are the Bayonne main vein and a splay of that, which is called the A vein. None of the other veins on the property have even been tested by diamond drilling. in the Sheep Creek camp, historic mining was from 34 separate veins. So we see good upside potential at Bayonne to explore and potentially develop some of the other veins. Bayonne main vein has been traced on surface and in underground workings for a strike length of almost 1 kilometer and over a vertical distance of up to 240 meters. And the vein remains open on strike in both directions and to depth. The A vein is a splay that joins the main vein, and it's got a known strike length of about 550 meters and has been traced over a vertical distance of about 180 meters. It's also open on strike and to depth, and that supports the good horizontal and vertical continuity to the veins that we'd hoped for with the granodiorite host rocks. The results that we've got are from surface samples. We don't have a good indication of width of veining or continuity of mineralization from those samples, but we've just started a drill program and that should give us that information. We've just finished drilling the Maggie-Aikens vein in the eastern part of the Bayonne property. And this is the first time that vein has ever been drilled. Right now we've got the drill set up over on the Bayonne main vein, and we're drilling the main and A veins below the level where historic mining stopped. There hasn't been any significant exploration drilling on these veins, and what our drill program is going to let us determine is the width of the veins. That's not always easy to see on surface because there's a real lack of vein exposure. And we'll be able to get a good indication of average gold grade over the width of the veins. So we think there is good potential at Bayonne, both to extend the Bayonne main and A veins beyond the limits of historic mining and to start building up tons on some of the other veins that haven't had any work done on them.